Before diving into this incredible story, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell. Every story here has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. In a large city full of gleaming skyscrapers and noisy streets, lived a young woman named Lila. She was 23 years old and worked as a cleaner in a luxurious building where the city's wealthiest families resided. Every day, she scrubbed the floor furiously while her younger brothers ate a meager, hastily prepared meal. Their father was long gone, and their mother had faded into endless work, leaving Lila to carry the burden of the family. Lila dreamed of a better life, but her days were filled with exhausting tasks, cleaning floors, dusting mahogany furniture, and enduring the scorn of the wealthy she served. Yet she always kept her smile, a light in her fatigue, and a dignity that no one could take away from her. One morning, while she was scrubbing the parquet floor of a vast dining room, a millionaire named Jonathan Harrington, known for his business dealings and extravagant lifestyle, entered the building. He had heard about a strange incident, a broken window in his penthouse, which seemed to have been repaired by someone discreet. Curious, he watched Lila work, impressed by her rigor and concentration. As she was applying herself, Lila accidentally slipped and fell, knocking over a bucket of water. Jonathan approached, but instead of reprimanding her as he would have with his usual employees, he looked at her closely. He saw something no one else saw: quiet strength, pure determination, and rare kindness. "Lila," he said softly, "you are amazing. I see your work, but I also see your heart." These simple words overwhelmed Lila. She had never heard a wealthy person recognize her value beyond her service. Jonathan, touched by her story, decided to help her. He offered her a more responsible position in his company, with a salary that would finally allow her to care for her brothers and fulfill her dreams. In just a few months, Lila transformed her life. She was able to send her brothers to school, improve their home, and even take entrepreneurship courses. The millionaire, for his part, discovered in her a valuable ally, someone loyal and wise, capable of inspiring him in both his business and personal life. What began as an ordinary day at work became a turning point. The young woman scrubbing the floor changed her own life, and that of her family, thanks to her perseverance and a watchful eye that came from the unexpected kindness of a millionaire. Lila got up before dawn, as she did every morning. The sky was still tinged with gray and blue, and the cool city wind slid over her shoulders. Her brothers were still asleep in the small room they shared, but she knew they would soon wake up, hungry. She prepared a meager breakfast, a few slices of stale bread and lukewarm water. She placed the meal on the table and watched them eat in silence. Her heart sank with each bite they quickly swallowed. She would have liked to offer them more, but her meager income did not allow it. Then, as she did every day, she put on her apron and grabbed her broom and bucket. The elevator of the luxury building opened before her, and she stepped inside, barely greeting the other busy employees. The wealthy residents had already left, and the building, immense and silent, seemed to breathe a cold, almost hostile air. Lila started in the lobby, scrubbing the floor with almost obsessive thoroughness. Every gesture was precise, every movement counted. She knew her work would never be noticed by the residents, but she clung to her dignity and the idea that she was doing something good for her family. As she passed through the corridor leading to the apartments on the top floor, she noticed an elegant young woman pouring coffee. Lila bowed her head in respect and continued her work, feeling the weight of the stairs and the murmurs of the wealthy who seemed never to see people like her. Then, suddenly, a sound of breaking glass echoed through the top-floor penthouse. Lila jumped and slipped slightly on the water she had just spilled. She sat up quickly, her heart pounding, hoping no one had noticed her clumsiness. But before she could calm herself, a deep, commanding voice spoke from behind her. "Lila." She turned around and saw a tall, elegant man standing there, with piercing eyes and a look both stern and curious. He wore an impeccable black suit, and his gaze seemed to scrutinize not only her work, but her soul. You're Mr. Harrington?" she whispered, her throat tight. He nodded, but didn't say anything right away. He watched her gesture, her calm despite the fall, her perseverance. Then he said the words that would change his life. "Keep it up. But know that I see more than your work. I see your heart. For Lila, this simple compliment was a flash of light in the darkness of her days. She didn't know it yet, but this moment would mark the beginning of a radical change, not only for her, but for her entire family. After that fleeting encounter in the hall, Lila felt her heart beat faster than usual. Mr. Harrington's words still echoed in her mind, I see your heart. It seemed unreal. No rich person had ever paid attention to her beyond her role as a housekeeper. That day, while she was cleaning the huge living room of the penthouse, the phone rang. She approached the receiver cautiously. Lila, said a deep, calm voice. This is Jonathan Harrington. Could you come to my office, please? Lila felt a wave of worry and excitement at once. She had heard of the whims of the rich, and yet something in that voice invited her to trust. When she entered the office, she discovered a bright space filled with modern paintings and dark leather furniture. Harrington sat behind a huge mahogany desk. He looked at her with an intensity that made her shiver. I've seen the way you work, he began. Your attention to detail, your perseverance, but above all, your calm and dignity despite the difficulties. You have something money can't buy, a pure and determined heart. Lila looked down, embarrassed. I'm just doing my job, sir. She whispered. No, he replied firmly but gently. You do much more than that. You care for others, you never complain, and you carry your responsibilities with courage. That kind of person is rare, Lila. He paused and watched her reaction. I want to offer you something. A chance. Not just a job, but a real opportunity to change your life and the lives of your family. Lila felt tears welling up, but she held them back. She had always dreamed of a better life, but she would never have dared to imagine such an offer. But, why me? She asked, her voice trembling. Jonathan smiled slightly. Because the world shouldn't be fair to those with money. It should be fair to those with heart. And you, Lila, you have a lot of it. That day, as she left the office, Lila felt a weight lift from her shoulders. She realized that her life had taken an unexpected turn. For the first time, she wasn't just an invisible cleaning lady, she was a person capable of dreaming big and aspiring for more. Her brothers, when they saw her come home that evening, saw the new light in her eyes. For them, it was more than just a smile, it was the announcement of a future they had never dared to imagine. The next morning, Lila arrived early at Jonathan Harrington's office, her heart pounding. She wore her cleanest clothes and a plain apron, even though she knew her role would soon change. She felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness, everything she knew was about to be turned upside down. Jonathan greeted her with a warm smile. Welcome to your new role, Lila. You won't just be the one who cleans and serves. I want you to be my primary personal assistant. You'll handle certain matters, organize my schedule, and be my confidant on important decisions. Lila could barely contain her surprise. Assisting a millionaire with his business? She had no experience. But Jonathan had seen something in her, a potential she herself hadn't dared imagine. I'll do my best, Mr. Harrington, she said with a sincerity that touched him. The first few days were a learning curve. Lila encountered business meetings, complex files, and phones that never stopped ringing. Each task seemed overwhelming, but she applied herself with the same thoroughness she had when scrubbing the floors of the building. Yet it wasn't all plain sailing. Some of the older employees looked at her skeptically, mocking her past as a cleaner. You don't belong here, one of them muttered one day as she placed some documents on Jonathan's desk. Lila felt the sting of injustice, but she forced herself to smile. She knew she had to prove her worth through actions, not words. Jonathan, noticing her seriousness and calm in the face of criticism, congratulated her. Lila, what you feel today, many would abandon. But you persist. That's exactly what I was looking for. One evening, after a long day, Lila returned home. Her brothers were waiting for her, impatient. She shared some details about her new job, but kept the challenges and criticisms to herself. She wanted them to see only hope and the promise of a better future. Sitting on her bed, she reflected on the journey she had taken. From the shadows of the floors she scrubbed to the light of the luxurious offices, Lila understood that her life had just changed for good. And she knew she had to stay strong, because the true test of her resolve was only just beginning. The following weeks brought Lila a mixture of wonder and tension. Although her position with Jonathan Harrington was a dream come true, it came with its own challenges. Every morning, she walked into the office feeling like she was treading uncharted waters. The meetings were long and demanding, the decisions sometimes cruel, and the pace unforgiving. She had to learn to juggle the constant calls, Jonathan's demands, and the high expectations of the other executives. One day, while she was organizing a major contract with a foreign partner, a senior employee, Mr. Whitman, tried to belittle her in front of everyone. "You're not trained for this kind of work, Lila," he said contemptuously. "You come from a completely different world." Lila's blood boiled, but she took a deep breath and replied calmly, "Perhaps, but I'm here to learn and contribute. And I'll do everything I can to succeed." Jonathan, who had been watching the scene from his office, approached and placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Lila is right," he declared authoritatively. "Competence doesn't come from the past, but from the willingness to learn and persevere." This intervention changed the atmosphere. The murmurs ceased, and even Mr. Whitman seemed surprised by Lila's determination. However, the challenges didn't end there. Managing Jonathan's time was a daily ordeal: unplanned business trips, last-minute meetings, invitations to social events. Lila had to learn to be responsive, strategic, and sometimes, make difficult decisions without hesitation. Despite everything, she felt alive. For the first time, she saw the concrete impact of her work. The decisions she helped organize influenced not only the company, but also hundreds of lives. In the evening, when she returned home, she found her brothers, who were beginning to notice the subtle changes in their daily lives: better meals, new clothes, and above all, the hope that a better future was possible. As she drifted off to sleep, Lila reflected that she had never imagined life could offer so many possibilities. She understood that this new role was not only a gift, but also a responsibility, to prove every day that Jonathan Harrington had been right to believe in her. And deep inside her, a new conviction was growing: nothing and no one could stop her from continuing on this path, whatever the cost. As the months passed, Lila grew more and more established in her role with Jonathan Harrington. What had started as an assistant role had evolved into a position where she had a say in some of the company's strategic decisions. One morning, Jonathan called her into his office. "Lila, I need your opinion on a very important project." It was an international partnership that could bring in millions for the company, but it also carried enormous risk. Many would have hesitated to make a decision, but Jonathan wanted to know what Lila, the young woman who, just a few months ago, was scrubbing floors in the shadows, thought. Lila felt her adrenaline pumping. She took her time analyzing the numbers, the contracts, and even the human relationships behind the deal. Then, confidently, she explained her point of view: the profits were tempting, but the legal and financial risks were too high. She proposed a safer alternative, one that would allow the company to grow without jeopardizing its foundations. Jonathan looked at her admiringly. "That's exactly what I wanted to hear. Your vision is clear and your judgment is precise. You're much more than an assistant." That day, Lila understood something important: her value was not only in the work she did, but in the way she thought and acted. For the first time, she felt in control of her destiny, capable of making decisions that could change her life and the lives of others. However, this newfound power also attracted jealousy. Some employees, unable to accept that a former housekeeper could have such an impact, began to plot against her, looking for the slightest mistake to discredit her. Lila had to learn to protect herself, to be firm and strategic, while remaining true to her values. Despite the obstacles, she felt a newfound satisfaction. Every success, every recognition, was the fruit of her perseverance, her intelligence, and her determination. She no longer depended solely on Jonathan's kindness; she was building her own power and credibility. That evening, when she returned home, she found her brothers eagerly waiting for her. She told them about the day's great progress, but this time, she didn't just talk about Jonathan, but about her own choices, her own strength. And for the first time, Lila felt that the future was no longer a matter of luck, but of the ability to create her own life. Everything seemed to be going well for Lila. Her position alongside Jonathan Harrington was solidified, and her influence within the company continued to grow. But one morning, reality struck. A key business partner on a multi-million-dollar project threatened to terminate the contract due to a misunderstanding. Rumors spread quickly, and some executives began to blame Lila, believing her lack of experience could cost the company dearly. Jonathan, true to his conviction, addressed her calmly but firmly, "Lila, this situation is critical. I know you can handle it. Show me that I was right to trust you." Lila felt the pressure mounting. She knew that every decision she made in the next few hours could have enormous consequences. She delved into her files, reread every contract, and contacted the right people to clear up the misunderstanding. Every conversation was tense, every gesture weighed. At the crucial moment, she requested a meeting with the partner. Her tone was confident, clear, and respectful. She explained the situation, presented concrete solutions, and reassured the other party of the company's reliability. After a lengthy discussion, the contract was saved, and the partner agreed to continue working together. Jonathan looked at her in admiration as she left the room. "Lila, you just saved a crucial project for the company. Your ability to stay calm and find solutions is beyond anything I imagined." For Lila, this success wasn't just professional, it was confirmation that her place at Jonathan's side wasn't due to luck, but to her perseverance, intelligence, and courage. She had learned that true power lies in self-control and confidence in one's abilities. Back home, she found her brothers. She told them about the victory with a tired but proud smile. They understood that their lives had changed. Lila was no longer simply the one who took care of them, but a woman capable of making decisions that could transform the world around her. This first major challenge marked a turning point in her life. She was no longer just Jonathan's protégé, but a true force he could rely on. And she knew, deep down, that greater challenges still awaited her, but she was ready. As Lila began to settle into her influential role alongside Jonathan Harrington, a new challenge presented itself, but this time it wasn't a professional obstacle, it was a moral and emotional dilemma. One day, a strategic contract involving a local organization needed to be signed quickly. Jonathan, pressed for time and financial pressures, suggested bypassing certain formalities to speed up the process. Many employees would have complied without thinking, but Lila immediately sensed something was amiss. She took a deep breath. "Mr. Harrington, I understand the urgency, but I think we must follow all procedures. If we ignore them, it could have serious consequences, not only legally but also morally." Jonathan looked at her, surprised. Usually, he didn't encounter resistance to his decisions. But he saw something unyielding in Lila's eyes, a conviction born of dignity and the experience of her past struggles. "All right, Lila," he said after a silence. "You're right. We'll do this properly." This decision was applauded by the company's ethical executives, but others began to murmur, implying that Lila was holding back growth. She once again felt the weight of judgment and envy. Yet she understood that her loyalty to her values was worth more than any outside approval. At the same time, her feelings for Jonathan were beginning to evolve. The gratitude and admiration she felt for him were mingling with something deeper. But she knew she had to keep her emotions in balance, because the mix of work and love could become complicated. One night, as she was walking home, her brothers saw her deep in thought. "What's bothering you, Lila?" one of them asked. She smiled weakly. "Just hard choices. Sometimes doing the right thing isn't the easiest." Her brothers looked at her with respect. To them, Lila was no longer just a sister and surrogate mother, she had become a living example of courage, resilience, and morality in a world that often rewards injustice. This chapter of his life taught him a valuable lesson: true power is not just about being successful, but about staying true to yourself and your principles, even when no one is watching. Everything finally seemed to be stable for Lila. Her role with Jonathan Harrington was solidified, and she was gaining the respect of almost every employee. But the calm was short-lived. One morning, a ruthless competitor, Marcus Belmont, burst into Jonathan's office. Belmont had heard of Lila's growing influence in strategic decisions and saw her as a potential weakness to exploit. He attempted to sow discord by insinuating that Jonathan's choices were being influenced by an inexperienced former housekeeper. Jonathan, true to his trust in Lila, didn't respond immediately. But Lila felt the tension rising in the room. She understood that this wasn't just an attack on her, but a threat to the entire company. Determined to protect her job and Jonathan's integrity, Lila took the lead. She gathered all the documents, contacts, and evidence needed to counter Belmont. She prepared a solid presentation, demonstrating how the decisions she had influenced had already yielded positive results and protected the company from major risks. On the day of the confrontation, in a crowded conference room, Belmont launched his accusations arrogantly. But Lila, calm and confident, responded point by point, presenting facts and evidence, while maintaining a professional and respectful tone. In the end, even the most skeptical executives were convinced of his competence. Belmont, surprised and humiliated, left the room without having succeeded in destabilizing the company. Jonathan looked at her with admiration and pride. Lila, you just saved not only this project, but also the company's reputation. Your strategy and courage are exceptional. That day, Lila realized her life had changed forever. She was no longer just a woman who had been recognized by a millionaire, she had become a force capable of protecting and influencing, shaping her destiny and that of those around her. At home, her brothers hugged her, proud and moved. Lila smiled, knowing that every challenge made her stronger, more confident, and more capable of overcoming whatever obstacles life threw her way. She now knew that true power comes not just from wealth or influence, but from courage, determination, and self-control in the face of adversity. After surviving the confrontation with Marcus Belmont, Lila felt she was ready to go even further. Her role with Jonathan Harrington was no longer just strategic, it was now also humanitarian and inspirational. She wanted to use her position to make a difference, not only for herself, but for her family and those around her. She started with her brothers. With her new salary and resources, she offered them better living conditions, new educational opportunities, and leisure activities they had never known. She showed them that perseverance could change destiny, and that they had the right to dream big. Then she turned to the company's employees who had once despised her. Rather than seek revenge, she chose compassion and teaching. She trained some of them, shared her organizational methods and strategies, and encouraged a spirit of collaboration. The results were impressive, productivity increased, and even skeptics began to admire her courage and intelligence. One day, Jonathan walked into the office and looked at her, moved. Lila, look at what you've accomplished. Not only have you saved the company and protected its interests, but you've also transformed the lives of the people around you. You're incredible. Lila smiled, humble but proud. She knew that every decision she made, every piece of advice she gave, had a real impact. She understood that true success wasn't just about climbing the ladder of power, but about using that power for something greater. Yet, even with all this success, she never forgot where she came from. Every night, she returned home to her brothers, prepare a simple but heartwarming meal, and tell them about her day. These moments reminded her that the most precious resource was the love and gratitude of her family, and that nothing could replace that human connection. As she watched her brothers sleep peacefully that night, Lila felt ready for the next chapter of her life. She knew even greater challenges lay ahead, but now she was confident in her ability to overcome them, armed with courage, perseverance, and wisdom. Years had passed since Lila had crossed the threshold of Jonathan Harrington's penthouse. The young woman who scrubbed the floors every morning had become a respected, admired, and influential force. Her life and that of her family had been transformed forever. Under Jonathan's guidance, she had not only learned the ropes of business and developed her strategic intelligence, but she had also maintained her integrity, compassion, and dignity. Every obstacle, every criticism, and every challenge had strengthened her. One morning, Jonathan summoned her to his office for a special meeting. Lila entered, thinking about an important matter. But to her surprise, Jonathan practically knelt down and pulled out a thick envelope. "Lila," he said emotionally, "I want you to officially co-own some of my businesses. Your intelligence, courage, and heart have been essential to every success we've had. I want you to be recognized for who you truly are, a partner and not just my assistant." Lila's eyes filled with tears. She thought of her brothers, their transformed home, their safety, their smiles every morning. She thought of all the employees she had helped grow, and how far she had come from the icy lobby where she scrubbed the floor. "Thank you, Mr. Harrington," she whispered, her voice trembling. "But I can never forget where I come from. Everything I've become, I also owe to my family, to my perseverance, and to my will to always do what's right." Jonathan smiled and placed a hand on her shoulder. "And that's exactly what makes you an exceptional person." That day, Lila realized that the real miracle wasn't money, title, or external recognition. The miracle was her inner strength, her resilience, and the way she had transformed her life and the lives of everyone around her. As she walked home that evening, she saw her brothers playing in the garden, their laughter filling the air. She smiled, her heart light, knowing that she had built not only a better future, but a legacy of courage, dignity, and hope. And in this happy silence, a certainty was felt: no matter the obstacles, perseverance and kindness always end up triumphing.